Let me just welcome you to week number 4 of our series called Failure to Launch. Let me just welcome you to Grace Life here in El Paso, Texas, as well as all of those who are joining us online all around, literally around the United States and around the world. I think, if I remember right, I checked earlier in the week, and my memory's not as good as it used to. Well, I never had one. But anyway, I think it was, as far as the United States, New York was one of the top users, as well as in a foreign country, Sweden, believe it or not. A whole bunch of people in Sweden were watching us online. So it's really great to have you all joining us wherever you're at, whatever part of the world you might be in. It's really awesome to have you with us today. Today we're going to be talking about camping on the edge of Canaan. So check out this video. I think it's kind of funny.
Dies das Eretz HaKodesh, der High Definition, Feru, Unehu, et Hadoeire. One day, the Tomeva is here, he said, one day. Now the details so clear, it's wrong and cheap. Roy said, out the please help, it's a wrong, is HD on yes. If I decide on that tomorrow.
For the first time in Israel, and only on Yes, High Definition.
Hey, you never know. Pretty crazy, huh? Oh, man. Yeah, HD TV on Yes, whatever. Okay, in Luke chapter 5, we read about a time when Jesus got in trouble with the religious police. Well, not really, because he actually had the unmitigated, well, he was in trouble with a lot of people. Because he had the unmitigated gall to eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners. Something that just simply was not allowed by any religious people, except for, especially for, highly religious people like the people called Jesus a rabbi, those kind of things. So Luke says that a tax collector by the name of Levi, or Matthew, as which we know him better by, threw a party in Jesus' honor. And in this particular party, of course, the people that were there were people that were tax collectors and sinners and those kind of things. So naturally, because of the kind of job that Levi had, that's the kind of friends that he had. So, which according to the Pharisees was, to attend a party like that, the Pharisees felt was an absolute abomination. You just don't do that. You don't eat and drink with tax collectors and sinners. As a matter of fact, let me just give you kind of a sideline. This extra won't cost you nothing. When the Jews would go out into, especially the Pharisees, when they would go out into the marketplace to buy food or whatever in the city, they would come home and they would ceremonially cleanse themselves as they walked into the house, just in case they might have possibly touched a tax collector or a sinner or a Gentile or any of those kind of people. So they were really, really hard on that idea, real strong on that idea that you don't rub shoulders with them, you don't eat with them, and you don't drink with them. That would be the worst possible thing that you could do, would be to eat and drink with them. Now, you probably have to talk with them in the marketplace sometimes or whatever, but don't ever eat and drink with them, because that's like being a part of them. So because of that, Jesus gave 3 really short illustrations, or maybe we could call them parables. They're really, really short ones. And to help clarify what he meant when he said, it is not those who are sick, who are well, who need a physician, but those who are sick. Well, of course, that's true, right? Those people that are well don't need a physician. And as a matter of fact, personally, I don't go to the doctor anymore, and I absolutely have to. And I've got to be dying before I go to the doctor. I visit the doctor probably once a year just because I have to get medications renewed, that kind of stuff, Well, of course, if you're not sick, you don't go to the doctor. And he said, I've not come to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. Now, that's where it gets a little, kind of strange that he would say something like that, because what happens is that what he's saying is that those who think they are well don't need a doctor, right? Those who think that they're well they're not going to go see a physician. Well, the Pharisees and the scribes thought that everything was cool between them and God, so they had no need to go to God, to go to Jesus or anybody else for anything at all. So his first illustration, and we looked at that last week, was the ridiculous idea that when somebody would buy a new pair of jeans and cut a piece out of that new pair of jeans to patch an old pair. Because he said the problem with that is that if you do that, not only aren't the colors won't match, but also when you wash them, it's going to shrink up and it's going to pull apart, it's going to tear, and both of them, of course, you've ruined both pair at that point in time. So it's a really clear-cut, easy to understand kind of an illustration. And so he says that you just don't do that. Those colors don't match, and they're just going to not compatible at all with each other. So today we're going to be looking at the next illustration which Jesus gives us, what he offers, in an effort to, he tells us these things in an effort to help us try to understand what he's talking about when he talks about how binding the dogma of religion is. That's what this is all about, is the binding dogma of religion that cannot be contained in the freedom for which Christ has made us free. So in his second illustration, Jesus talks about putting new wine into old wineskins. Look at it. He says, and no one puts new wine into old wineskins. Otherwise, now notice he said no one. Otherwise the new wine will burst the skins and it will be spilled out and the skins will be ruined and the new wine must be put into fresh wineskins. Well, the unspoken fact there is that the new wine will be lost as well, right? Everything's a loss. It's just a complete, total, absolute, epic failure thing, right? Epic fail. So I think I can safely say that the image of wineskins and putting wine into wineskins, this particular parable, is totally foreign to our culture today. I think I can safely say that. Because the only wine container that probably a lot of us can think of, leather wine container, would be those leather botas that the Spaniards use, right? Yeah, bota bag. And you squirt that white into your mouth and you carry that with you, that kind of thing. But that's not even close to what Jesus is talking about. It's not anywhere near what's being said here. So what Jesus is talking about, in that particular culture, that particular day and time, the first century wineskins were made of the skins of goat or sheep, of a goat or a sheep. And what they would do, the way they were able to do that, was that they would, and those of you who have maybe grown up on a farm or trapped any or those kind of things, you case skin an animal. And a case skinning means that you cut the skin, the animal, the sheep or goat, up this way through here, okay, and you peel it off like a sweater. You literally peel it off like a sweater, okay, so that when you get done, you only have a few holes, well, a couple of holes to actually stop up. The legs, you just tie those closed, right, when you get that far, and you can sew the neck part closed, or the other end, sew the other end closed, and use the neck as the opening, whichever. And so you've got this case skin. The other type of skinning that probably a lot of you think about is really called open skinning, which would be like the bear hide that's hanging on my wall in my office. If you haven't seen that, go in there and look at it. My office is open. You're welcome to go in there anytime. That would be open skin. Well, nothing's going to hold that, right? It's not going to hold anything. Not made that way. So case skinning, and that's what they would do to make wine bags, wine skins, that they would pull that off like a sweater, off the animal like a sweater. And then you could tie the holes closed, and you could fill it with this new wine. And of course, new wine being what? Basically grape juice, right? And letting it ferment from that point on, right? Okay. So, how many of you ever had any experience with a fresh hide, a fresh skin of any kind? How many of you ever had experience with that? Okay, a lot of us have. A lot of guys have.
In high school, we used to butcher pigs and cows.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a lot of that goes. A lot of us have experience in that area. As a matter of fact, I can tell you from a lot of personal experience that a fresh hide definitely has a lot of stretch to it. There's a lot of stretch to it. And it's hard to tear a new hide, especially like a goat or something like that. There are other animals that their skin's a lot thinner. But with animals like that, their hide is really tough, and you can stretch it a long ways before it will actually, I don't think you could do it with your hands. I don't think it's possible to stretch it far enough to make it tear or break or what those kind of things are. So when you put that new wine into fresh wineskins, the hide would, absolutely, you can understand, would stretch with the fermentation process, right? It just happened to cross my mind that when they came across, when they in the old days, they bring wine across in the ships, they had a problem because with the shaking and the rattling and those kind of things, they would lose a lot of the wine because it would shake the bottles and the cork would pop out and they'd lose a lot of the wine that way. So they had to, kind of change the way they did that kind of stuff a little bit different. So on the other hand, after this fermentation process is complete, after that is done, and it might continue for as much as 4 months from what I understand, from what I read. The skin at that point would have not only been stretched probably close to its limit, but more importantly, that collagen protein that's in the skin itself has already been done away with by the alcohol in the wine. So it's become hard and more brittle, and it's where it's going to be. You can't stretch it any farther, and it's probably not going to shrink back much either because it's already there, right? I mean, it's done. You've used it for that process, and the stretching ability of that skin is gone. It will not stretch anymore. I can tell you as well from a lot of personal experience that this dry skin, a skin that's already dried, tears very easily. It'll even break. You can even break it. It's brittle. Depending on how thick the hide is. We're talking about rawhide, right? A lot of you maybe know what I'm talking about when I say rawhide. That may be a more common term. Is that on a thinner skin animal like a goat or a sheep or whatever, that skin becomes very brittle when it's dry, and you can break it real easy. It'll tear apart, and it just rips apart with your hands, real simply. So when Jesus talks about putting new wine into old wineskins and how that would be a disaster, hopefully you can understand at this point then that certainly would be a disaster. This wineskin has already been stretched to its limit. It has no stretching ability left in it. And the collagen protein that's there is gone. It's all been eaten up by the alcohol. And it's just simply, if you stretch it any farther, it's going to break. It's going to split apart. And it's going to be worthless from that point on for anything, much less any wine or whatever. So that expansion process of the new wine would simply burst open the old wineskins if you put new wine into old wineskins, and everything's gone. That's what he says. That's a long way of saying, Jesus said, nobody does that, right? It's just a long way around to help us in this modern generation, modern time, to understand what that kind of a process was like a little bit. So I want you to notice here is that what Jesus is saying is that no one does that because you can't. In the previous illustration, he says you can, but nobody does because it makes a mess. You ruin both pairs of jeans. Now, the ruining process is the same, but it seems to me that there is sort of a progression to some degree. Take that as it is. The new jeans, certainly, if you took a new patch off of a new pair of jeans and patched an old pair, you can wear them for a while. They'll look stupid because everybody's going to go, you guys need it, right? Yeah, look what he did. Yeah. But then once you wash them, then it shrinks off, and it'll tear, and then neither pair is any good anymore. In this particular process, he's saying that we're going an extra step and saying it's not that you can if you try real hard. It's not that you can because some people have figured out a way to do it. If you do the process just right, you can get away with it. It's that you can't. You can't. So the fact is, no one does because you can't. it's even more ridiculous than cutting up a new pair of jeans to patch an old pair. Okay.
You can't beat the process.
No, you can't. You can't beat the process. So the question then is what is Jesus referring to here? What's he talking about? Why do the new wine and old wineskins, what do they represent, if anything, and what is he trying to illustrate? What's he trying to get across to us at this point? When he uses this particular, because he uses three, the one with the jeans and the new, putting a new patch on an old pair, and then in the second illustration, it's about the old wineskins, putting new wine into old wineskins. And believe it or so what the question is, what is he talking about here? Well, believe it or not, probably a lot of us or most of us here are saying, well, I think I know what he's talking about. Well, believe it or not, there's a lot of different ideas about what they think Jesus is talking about, depending on which direction you come from and how you understand the Bible, what you know about grace or don't know about grace, or what you think you might know about grace, those kind of things. Some say that we are the new wineskins, that it's us. He's talking about us. That you are supposed to abandon the old wineskins in your life, right? We all have a lot of old wineskins in our life. We're supposed to abandon that so that God can pour Himself into the new wineskin of your new life in Jesus Christ. I disagree, but okay. Others say that he's referring to the scribes and the Pharisees, who were mere professors of religion, and they were self-righteous people, and that when it comes to pouring new wine into them, they're ruined, right? Okay, well there's maybe something to that as well, but okay. Still others say that Jesus is the new wine. And they say that Jesus is bursting through these old wineskins and all these old wineskins are trying to contain Him, and they can't. That's another idea. Another idea is that Jesus is talking about being culturally relevant. That you got to keep up with the times. That's what they think. There's some people that think that that's what Jesus is talking about. Got to keep up with the times, you know.
Can't be old.
That's what some people think. Is that's what Jesus is talking about? The message of the gospel itself is both, timeless and flawless. I've heard that. I've been told that and heard that in denominational setting, that the message of the gospel is timeless. Of course, it's their idea of what the gospel is again. But the package it's wrapped in has to adapt with the times or we're going to quickly lose relevance. Well, there's something to that, yes, but the question is that what Jesus is talking about here? And actually, that's exactly what a lot of denominations are doing today, is they're trying to become culturally relevant and trying to gain followers by simply doing nothing more than, I'm going to call it what it is, lying about who they are. Instead of putting their denominational name on the sign, they say, we're a community church. No, they are not. No, they are not.
Yeah.
They are a denominational church, and they have very definite denominational standards and qualifications and all that kind of stuff that they follow. However, people go to that church because they feel better. I'm attending a community church.
All kind of wrong.
Yeah.
All kind of wrong.
It's a bunch of BS is what it is. When you finally get in there, then they've got all these rules and regulations you got to follow, right? No, it's just not that way. So, that doesn't help. That doesn't work, right? Okay, final one then that I'll mention, and there's probably a lot of them, is the idea that this is referring to our fear of change. That we've become stiff and rigid in our beliefs and our system and all that kind of stuff, and we're afraid of any kind of change. Well, all those things are true, right? All those things we just mentioned are probably true to some degree or other. That change within a church setting, that can cause outright war. It can. So even though those are all good thoughts, that's not what Jesus is talking about here. Because all of those things, and if you'll notice, you look through that list, all of those things are about changing our behavior in one form or another, right? Did you notice that? They're all about somehow changing our behavior to become more pleasing to God and trying to do what God wants us to do, and and still be culturally relevant. Fake people into coming in here so we can give them all our load of bullcrap, all that kind of stuff. So no, but what Jesus is talking about. What Jesus is talking about is the new wine of Big G grace, what I call Big G grace. It's what Jesus taught. It's what the disciples taught. It's what all the New Testament writers taught. It's just people take it and twist it to be something they want it to be. It's about the new wine of what Jesus brings, the freedom and the grace that cannot be contained in the oldness and the rigidity of religious law. Okay, let me show you what I mean. We need to kind of back up here and let's look at this in a little more detail. First of all, Jesus says the old wineskins are going to burst open, and both the new wine and the old wineskins are going to be totally lost, ruined, no good for nothing ever. Right? So what do the old wineskins represent? Well, the old wineskins represent the Old Testament law. They do. That's what he's talking about here. The legalism and the dogma of religion. That's where they were all at. Okay, by way of reminder, and I need to do that right here, is that remember, it wasn't the Pharisees who were asking this question. They asked, the people that were asking this question said, we noticed the Pharisees do it this way, and the disciples of John do it basically the same way. But you and your disciples, Jesus, you're in here eating with us, and you're drinking with us. What's the deal? It's the tax collectors and sinners that are asking this question because they're saying, we can see a problem here. You are way different than either the Pharisees or the disciples of John. You're way different. Because the disciples of John say, well, you got to be baptized, you got to join a church, you got to do all that stuff. And the Pharisees, you got to say, you got to keep the rules, you got to keep religion, you got to do all this stuff in order to be right with God. And Jesus is saying, it's all about freedom. It's all about Big G grace, dude. So he's in there drinking with tax collectors and sinners, and tax collectors and sinners are saying, what gives? We can ask you this question because we can see that you're not stuck in the dogma of religion as far as the Pharisees, nor are you stuck in the dogma of religion of John and his followers. That you seem to be free to just do what you know is right. You accept me, a sinner. Okay, I'm a prostitute, or a drug dealer or whatever, right? Come out of the closet. I'm coming out of the closet today. I'm a thespian. Never mind.
Don't even go.
Don't even go there.
Don't even go there.
It's all about that stuff, though, isn't it?
Yeah, sure.
And we want to judge other people for their lives, the way they live, what they do, all that kind of stuff. And Jesus is not even doing that. He said, it's not even about whether you're a homosexual or whether you're a drug dealer or whether you're a prostitute or whether you're an alcoholic. It's not about that stuff anyway. And all of those people, homosexuals, lesbians, all that kind of stuff, he's saying, you're people. God came to give you the same freedom and grace as he did everybody else.
But they're always going to be judged.
Always. And Jesus doesn't judge them in any way, shape, or form. Okay? So what do we know? So this wineskin that Jesus talks about is that is so stiff and so hard and so rigid that it can't contain anything else. You can't put anything new in it because it'll bust it open. Is this dogma of religion, the law, the Old Testament law. So what do we know about the law? Well, what was or is the purpose of the law to begin with? Why did God give the law in the first place? Well, check out what Paul says about the law in 2 Corinthians chapter 3. He said, it is not that we are adequate in ourselves to consider anything as coming from ourselves, but our adequacy is from God. In other words, the stuff we do isn't even from us, right? Living the right way, living the right way, living like God wants us to live, all that kind of stuff. It's not about our ability to live the Christian life does not come from ourselves. That's law that says your ability does come from you. You just got to make up your mind not to sin no more. And Paul says, no, it doesn't come from ourselves. Instead, he said our ability comes from God. Now check out the next few verses. Here's what he says. And that's God, has also made us adequate as servants of the new covenant, not of the letter, but of the Spirit. For the letter kills, but the Spirit gives life. But if the ministry of death in letters engraved in stones, there are your 10 commandments, right? In the letters engraved in stones came with glory, so that the sons of Israel could not look intently at the face of Moses because of the glory of his face. Sure enough, fading as it was, how will the ministry of the Spirit fail to be even more with glory? Right? Question mark. For if the ministry of condemnation has glory, 10 commandments on stone, if they have glory, much more does the ministry of righteousness abound in glory. For indeed what had glory, had, past tense, in this case has no glory, because of the glory that surpasses it. For if that which fades away was with glory, much more that which remains is in glory. Right? A lot of glories there. Lots of glories. Lots of glories on both sides. But you know what? This is all about, I want you to notice here how many different names we saw for the law. How many different names he gives for the law. He said the letter kills, it's called the ministry of death, and it's called the ministry of condemnation. He never speaks of the law in any good terms. It's all about killing and about death and about condemning. Isn't that what religion is? It's all about condemnation. Get your life straightened out, you're going to hell. Right? Oh, makes for good preaching. Grab your snot rag out of your back pocket and wipe your... Yeah, pound the pulpit and all that stuff. Makes for good preaching. People go to listen to that real good. But Jesus said, it's not about that. It's not... The letter kills. Don't you see that? I was driving over to Lee's house yesterday. We were going to go grab her. I was going to grab my girlfriend and go eat some lunch. And and on the way over, it seemed like traffic was just poking, you know. Coming up Red Road here is 45 miles an hour, which means you can do 49 legally. And and everybody was doing about 35. And I was thinking, I was thinking about that. It just drives me crazy, you know. I thought, let me around. And of course, they're all, piled up. And I'm thinking, you know what? They're all acting like they're headed to church on Sunday. They hate to go there, and they're going just as slow as they can. That was a thought that crossed my mind. This ain't Sunday morning.
And the biggest problem is...
Yeah, right, huh? And they're all going slow because they just hate to have to go to church. And I know people that they go to church and go, I'm glad that's over, right? Well, I hope you don't leave here feeling that way. You know, it should not be that way. And the reason it is that way in most places is because it's all about legalism. It's all about getting your life straightened out. It's all about doing the right thing. So why in the world did God give law to begin this? Well, because God is hoping that we'll finally come to the realization that you can't do that. You cannot live up to the standard of the law. That's what God's hope was. Is to say, okay, you want to live by the law? Here it is. Let's see how's that been working for you. Right? That's what God says. It's like when the Israelites will stand on the edge of the promised land. Here they are standing on the edge of the promised land. God, and they sent in Joshua and Caleb with a bunch of other guys. Joshua and Caleb came back out after spying out the land. They said, man, it's awesome. Good night. You would not believe. That land truly is a land flowing with milk and honey. They brought back a bunch of big old grapes, pulled between them. They said, man, it's awesome. But you know what? There's some giants in there too, some giant men. They're kind of scary. And the Israelites said, oh, wait a minute. Whoa, hold the phone here, No. And they refused to go in. Why? Because they were afraid of the giants. And they decided that it was easier and safer to stay where they were in their legalism than it was to go in and enjoy the freedom of their brand new promised land. And because of that, they spent another 40 years. And those that refused to go in never did get to go in, ever. They died before they reached that point. Whew. Man. So God gave the law for the express purpose of driving us to the realization that Jesus is the only way. You can't get there by keeping the law. So Jesus said the second result of putting new wine in old wineskins is that the new wine will be lost and wasted. Well, that's right, meaning that the new wine represents the new life and the freedom we have in Jesus Christ. So in Romans chapter 7, verse 6, Paul says, but now we have been released from the law, having died to that by which we were bound. All those are religious words. The word religion comes from a Latin word that means to bind or to tie up. That's why I hate the word religion. And the only time I use religion is in the opposite term. We died to that by which we were bound, so that we serve in newness of the Spirit, not in the oldness of the letter. There we are, right? Those old wineskins, the newness of the fresh wine and the expansion of it, and the oldness of the letter, the old wineskins, they're going to bust apart and they'll both be ruined. Neither one is any good at that point. Because, hey, if we get busted by it, we're no good either. And that happens to a lot of people. The dogma of religion cannot be contained in the newness of life that we have in Jesus Christ. So, just in case we might be tempted to try to do that, to sweeten the legalism a little bit by, that you grew up with, that we probably all grew up with, to sweeten that legalism just a little bit by pouring a little bit of grace in there. Isn't that what religion does? Religion takes a big heaping, they take the whole thing about the law, and they try to pour a little bit of new wine in on top of it, right? Let's sweeten the pot just a little bit. So Paul warns us in Galatians 5:1. He said it was for freedom that Christ has made us free. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be subject again to this yoke of slavery. You keep standing on it, man. It's good. And don't try to either pour legalism, a little bit of legalism into the new wine of grace, and don't try to pour this new wine of grace into a little bit of legalism on the path. So they're incompatible. Can't do that. It's one or the other. It's not both. It's not a little bit of this one and a whole lot of that one, or a whole lot of this one, a little bit of that one. You can't do that. Oh, okay. Did you notice also that Paul gave us another name for the law? What is it? The last phrase. A yoke.
Talking about slavery?
A yoke of slavery. There's another name. There's a fourth name now.
No problem.
The ministry of death, the ministry of condemnation, all those kind of things. And now we've got the yoke of slavery. Yeah, well, that's what religion is, isn't it? It's just nothing but slavery to all the rules and regulations and stuff that you got to do in order to be right, supposedly right with God. I can tell you from personal experience that trying to put new wine of Big G grace into the old wineskins of legalism doesn't work.
And so you tell me in this day and age, you know what? When are people going to give up prejudice?
Yeah, well, it's probably not going to happen. But we don't have to be that way. We are the new wine, right? Because listen, preaching the message of Big G grace in a religious church, in a legalistic church, I've done it. Been there, done that. It ain't pretty. It's like farting at a funeral, or trying to join the Hell's Angels with a Kawasaki. It just ain't gonna work. Man, no, don't even try it. It's not worth it, people. Preach Big G grace in a legalistic, it just doesn't work. So legalism cannot coexist with grace. Grace cannot coexist with legalism. The expansion of the freedom of what that is ours in Jesus Christ cannot be contained in the traditions and the dogma of religion. As a matter of fact, Jesus broke the chains of legalism and religion. He didn't just stretch them a little bit. He didn't add another link in there. He broke the chains of the dogma of religion and legalism by giving us new life in Him. New life. Huh. Isn't that what new wine is? New wine is new life. It expands. It expands. Old wine has already expanded all it's going to. It's done. It's as good as it's ever going to get. But new wine continually expands and gets better with time, not worse. Listen, Jesus gives us this new wine of new life in Him so that we might be free, be able to be freed from this launching pad of legalism. That's what legalism is. It's a launching pad. I said, here it is. See how well you do. Well, when you figure out you can't get off the launching pad, you go, okay, I need some help here. No, we don't need help. We need His intervention. We don't need His help. We need His intervention. We need Him to simply give us a new life in Him. So, He's done that so that we also, in turn, as individuals, might be free to use our individual talents and gifts and abilities in His kingdom. So Paul says again in Galatians 5:1, it was for freedom that Christ has made you free. Therefore, keep standing firm and do not be bound again by the yoke of slavery. Do not. Keep standing firm on what you know is the grace and the freedom that is in Jesus Christ, and do not allow anyone to bring you back to that yoke of slavery. How important is that? Wow. Crazy. Crazy awesome. Crazy awesome. God's awesome. And Jesus is the warrior of all warriors who has fought that battle for us. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is His name.
And if you don't believe that,